Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout news video. So, hot off the heels of last week's PTS update, Bethesda have now shared full details of what's coming in the update in September, or at least what's currently on the PTS anyway. So, let's jump in, take a look at this. Okay, so yeah, on Friday of last week, the PTS came up again, and Bethesda didn't tell us what they were changing. They just said you're going in at new character level and checking out what's there. So we had a look at that in a previous video. That went up at the weekend. So if you want to take a look at that one, I will link that somewhere up in this corner, and I'll try and remember to link it down below as well. So do have a gander at that. But yeah, basically, a lot of the new stuff here is geared towards new players and new characters. Looking at this list of stuff before we dive into it, I have some very, very mixed feelings. The idea is to make it a smoother start for new characters, new players, and to get them into the game faster, and to get them into new content faster, the new stuff that's coming out. In my opinion, it's going to end up with them being overloaded with information in some cases, which can already happen to some degree. They've done some effort to try and offset that, but I still think that's going to be a bit of a problem. It's also got a lot of changes that are making a game that is already far too easy much easier, which is not a good thing at all. This game needs to have some actual challenge injected back into it. At its current state, there is no challenge, so the change is moving in completely the wrong direction, in my opinion. There is some good stuff in here, so we'll get to that, but my feelings are I'm a little bit alarmed by some of this stuff. I'm not convinced that this is going to be a net gain for the game. But let's have a look at what's in here, because this is a decently long list. So, okay, PTS update and highlight changes, July 2023. Okay, so we've reopened the public test server to share an early look at our upcoming game improvements for Fallout 76. We'll see. We hope you'll join us in trying out these changes, and I'm very interested in your feedback and bug report on the Discord server. Right off the bat, as we covered on Friday, players can now choose to start at level 20. This gives them starter weapons, armor, perk packs, and various survival supplies and pre-filled loadouts. So yeah, in short, it gives you... you choose a starting build, either melee or shotguns or pistols or automatic rifles. I think that's the lot for now. There's a VAT-based one as well. Then it gives you a few bits and pieces, a few perks. Starts you at level 20 with leather armor, and off you go. Now, this is not the most impactful change in and of itself. When you merge out the level 20, in theory it would make combat easier, and it does a bit, but that's more to do with the fact you've got more stim packs and stuff like that when you come out, and a better gun. But at the same time, enemies' difficulty scales with you these days in Fallout, so the enemies you're encountering are more difficult than they would otherwise be if you'd left at level 1 anyway, so it kind of offsets itself. It doesn't really change too much learning sort of mechanics and stuff for the most part, because the majority of those tutorials are location-based, not level-based, so you encounter them by progressing through the story, getting to new spots that teach you new things about the game, be that Flatwoods or the Wayward and places like that. However, some things are level-based, for example perk loadouts and stuff like that. And also just straight up learning the perk card system and how all that works and familiarising yourself with that, which if you haven't done, you're getting dumped on you quite quickly and in a lot more complexity than you would do if you start at level 1. In level 1, obviously, you're given one perk card, and you can figure that out from there, and then at level 2 you get another perk card. It's much simpler. When you start at level 20, your next perk card comes in at 21, and suddenly you've got a whole system to kind of juggle and understand, which is not really clearer for a new player. For a returning player who's starting a new character, yeah, great, go ahead. But I think for a new player, probably not the best. That being said, I do think that you get new player experience has some room for streamlining and a little bit more direction, because you emerge from the vault and get spammed with a whole bunch of different quests, some of which are probably not that great for you to be starting at that point. Getting them a bit further on and pushing them maybe even further down the road level-wise would probably not be a terrible idea. Although they have done some stuff to make this a bit clearer as well. I just don't think it's necessarily quite as effective an improvement as they think it is, and I think there are costs to be paid for these changes. So yeah, one of the other issues, of course, I have with this that is going to crop up on several occasions as well, is it gives you starter weapons. Not so much an issue with the armour, although kind of, and we'll come to that in a minute. But with weapons, you get either a 10mm pistol, a pump-action shotgun, a half-decent baseball bat, and so on. You get the general idea. Problem is, even more than before, and it was already relatively useless, it completely wipes out any value from the starter tier of guns, particularly pipe weapons. They're utterly useless to the player now. And they kind of have been ever since you left Vault 76 with a 10mm pistol, because that's 200 shots and a 10mm pistol, and it was way more effective than a pipe pistol ever would be. But at least pipe revolvers had some use in terms of early game putting sort of damage. Just about you could justify in the early levels using a pipe sniper rifle, maybe, at a pinch. But other than that, they are pretty much redundant. And this is going to affect something else as well on down the line. And I think that's a bit of a pity, because it was kind of cool back in the day that you actually had a use for that stuff when you started out. Because there were never any use in Fallout 4 either, because of the same issue, with the singular exception of a particular legendary scenario, which was a bit cheesy even then. Anyway, moving on, let's have a look at the other stuff, or I'm going to rant for hours. We've placed a donation box outside of Vault 76 for players to help one another. We touched on this last time as well. It's basically a crate out front of Vault 76, wherein anything you don't need, you can just drop it in there, be it plans or legendaries or weapons, ammo, stims, whatever, so that new players can help them out. It's formalising that drop stuff for new players mentality that has been informally in the game anyway, and now everybody has a single location to go to, and new players have a single location to look at so they can find it, rather than having to learn this thing that's a little bit buried in the community. A little bit, from the perspective of a new player anyway. So this is a good change. A few people pointed out this could be open to some abuse. Technically, yes, anybody can just take stuff out of the box. They could make it level limited, I suppose, but I don't think it's really necessary, because there's not a lot of gain to a high-level player in looting the odd legendary, a bit of ammo, and the odd stim. It's really not that helpful. It's not going to impact your game much. And at the same time, the people who are losing out, i.e. new players, are not losing anything anyway because they never had it to begin with, if you follow me. So I don't think it's that big an issue. Maybe Bethesda will level lock it, I don't know, on down the line, but I don't think there's any real loss there, even if some people do try and misuse it. And on the whole, I think it simplifies a really nice element of the community that has been there since basically the get-go. So, 2 new perks added. Didn't know about these until today. Arms Keeper and Stable Tools. These are cool because they plug gaps in the current spread of perks, which makes a lot of sense. So, Arms Keeper is a strength perk that reduces the weight of rifles by 25, 50 or 75%. Helpful. Most other weapons have weight-reducing perks. Rifles did not. Now, this goes under strength as well, which is good, because most rifles are perception-based. In fact, I think all of them are. So that's basically a good combination. It doesn't get in the way of your damage-based perks as well, so that's cool. Stable Tools, on the other hand, that is a durability perk for automatic melee weapons. So your auto-axe, your chainsaw, ripper, drills. There's probably other stuff that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but you get the gist. So again, 10, 15, 20% more durability. Not a bad thing to have. Don't quite know where this is on the list. I would guess it's an intelligence perk, because that would make sense. If it was a strength one, for example, then that would get in the way of the damage perks. So I'm guessing it's probably an intelligence one, because that would also align with a lot of the other durability-related perks as well. Gunsmith, for example. So that would be my guess. But basically, they fill in a couple of gaps, so that's cool. So here we get into another bad change, in my opinion. There are now level 10 versions of the T-45 and Raider power armor. Okay, so in terms of power armor tier, you've got Raider, then you've got T-45 and Excavator, then you go up to T-51, T-60, and so on. By making Raider and T-45 start at the same level, i.e. level 10, you're making Raider power armor completely redundant because it has much worse stats than T-45. So you might as well just grab T-45, which is not hard to find, generally speaking, and get going. The fact it's available at level 10, I mean, if they bump the T-45 up a section or two, maybe rank 15 or 20, I'd be okay with that. But pulling T-45 down to level 10 completely wipes out any value from Raider power armor, apart from sticking it on a display stand in your camp if you want to do that. And most people are going to display things with skins on anyway, so yeah, it basically makes that entirely redundant, in my opinion. So I think that's a bad change. Wiping out entire categories of gear that were already on the edge of being useless anyway, admittedly. It just really makes it pointless, and they might as well just yank the whole set of power armor out of the game for anybody other than, raiders themselves. So yeah, I don't like that at all. If you want to go ahead and use it for RP reasons, okay, I guess, but in terms of any practical function, well, Raider Power Armor doesn't have one anymore. Or it won't come this update at the end of August. So, they've added a new filter when viewing for perk cards. Okay, simple UI change, actually kind of vaguely helpful if you're looking for that one that you've just dropped in and you're in the wrong part of the menu for some reason. So, not a terrible thing. And we now give a warning to players under level 50 trying to enter daily ops. This is not a bad thing either. Obviously, daily ops, they are level 50 plus group content. Supposed to be, don't get me wrong, if you've got a decent loadout and you're reasonably familiar, you've taken the time to learn daily ops, then you're going to be okay going through it solo. There's a good chance you'll even be able to get Elder rank. However, if you're under level 50 and underprepared, there is a very good chance you're going to get whacked. So it's not a bad idea to have a warning for that, I think. So, Workbench changes. These are mostly good, I think. A little bit of fine-tuning maybe needed, but still, mostly good. All Workbench lists now use alphabetical sorting. Yep, I thought they already did, but I'm guessing there were exceptions, so that's good. Organise that, make it a bit clearer, easy to find what you're looking for. Item names in Workbenches are now standardised across all lists. Not exactly sure what the implication of that is. I thought they already were, kind of. But, yeah, that's not a bad thing. Again, further clarity. A Show Unlockable button now shows recipes you can learn through a plan, scrapping, or can purchase in the Atomic Shop. So if it specifies on this, which I would assume is what they're trying to say here, then knowing whether or not you need a plan, you need to scrap, or go to the Atomic Shop is helpful. It adds clarity, it makes it easier to figure out where you need to get that particular mod or item or whatever from. If it's a plan, however, obviously there's a lot of different places those plans can potentially come from. It could be from enemy drops, you could be buying it from robot vendors, you could be buying it from Gram, you could be getting it from specific events, or be that constant public events or seasonal events. There's a lot of possibilities there, so that's still pretty vague. But at least you know you don't scrap. You're not just going to be scrapping hundreds of items that aren't ever going to drop you the thing you're looking for. So that's not such a bad thing. Particularly, again, for new players. Unlearned recipes show the name of the plan you need, what item to scrap, or lets you buy it from the store. So again, it points you in the direction a little bit more clearly. Telling you what item to scrap, I imagine that's kind of self-evident already, I would think. So I don't think that's a big change. Lets you buy it from the store. I'm guessing this is just much like with stuff in the main build menu. If you see an item that is there sort of with a red Atomic Shop item, you can go straight and buy it from the store. If it is currently on sale, I would assume this still applies here. If it's not currently in the shop, you probably won't be able to buy it. I would assume it works the same way as it currently does. As for knowing the name of the plan you need, well, quite a lot of the plans have different names compared to the thing they actually teach you to build. So this is good. This is an area that definitely needed clarity, and it's getting it. So I think that is a very good change. This one, I'm not quite sure I understand. It's a wording thing, mostly. 1-star legendary mods no longer show up under random legendary mods. 2- and 3-star mods now display correctly under current mods when inspecting the item. So the pop-up on screens can be more reliably accurate, that's fine, when you inspect an item. 1-star legendary mods no longer show up under random legendary mods. I'm guessing this means, and I'm purely a guess, that you will no longer be able to re-roll a 1-star legendary. So you'll either have to go for a 2-star or a 3-star. I would assume this is because nobody is doing it. Why would you roll a 1-star legendary when almost, well, within a few rolls at least, you can almost always come up with a better version for having 2 or 3 stars? Yeah, it costs a bit more to roll that, but the necessary components for that are not particularly difficult to come by, so yeah, I can kind of see why they're taking that out. I imagine nobody is using it. And they've improved the learned mod counter. The only improvements I could think of there are to have them accurately reflect the number of mods you can learn and have learned in more circumstances. So I assume that's what they've done. Other than that, I don't see how one could improve that. So, design changes. There's stuff in here that is good, and there is stuff in here that is very not good. So, cracking on. We've lowered the level requirements for various perk cards, kicking it off with a bad change. So, short version, this means you become more powerful, more quickly, in a game that is already far too easy. Look at the most recent update, there is at least one weapon in there that needs the Living Daylights nerfing out of it, along with various other builds that have been around for ages. because they make combat so completely trivial as to be not worth having it in the game. Like, if it is no threat to the player to get into combat, it's not worth having. Defeats the whole point of combat. So making you more powerful more quickly makes that situation worse. So this is a bad change. Don't like that at all. Unless, of course, they're going to go along behind it and then make combat a lot more threatening, which they're not going to do. So yeah, in short, not a good change. Added more default camp recipes for all players. This is a good change. In short, when you come out of the vault with a new character, the number of things you can build at your camp is really quite limited, and you're going to wind up with something very bare bones until you find a lot of plans around the game, or spend a very long time buying stuff from the Atomic Shop. Especially if you're a new player, that could be quite intimidating. Having more stuff early on is going to make engaging with that system more interesting, because you can build more interesting stuff, you can make your camp look better, quicker, and it'll get more people into a system that is pretty deep and involved and has a vast amount of options that can be acquired over time. So having more of an in there is a good thing, especially as camp building is one of the things that keeps people coming back to the game. One of. So you can see why they'd want to emphasise people getting the best out of that they can. It's a very popular thing. So, they've rebalanced combat in Morgantown and Somersville. I have no idea what this means, because I haven't had the occasion to test it. So yeah, I find it hard to believe they've made that combat more difficult. I suspect they've probably gone the opposite direction and made it more easy. We'll see, I guess. But yeah, I'm gonna hold off on forming a strong opinion, but my hunch is not particularly optimistic. They've replaced Liberator bots outside of Vault 76 with feral ghouls. Spotted this one. Don't know why. I don't feel like it's a impactful change at all. I don't know. It's a thing. That's about all I have to say on that. It doesn't make it any more difficult or any less difficult. Feral ghouls maybe are a little bit more of a prevalent enemy than Liberators are, so they're kind of more part of the game world. Maybe, but even that's a stretch, really. So yeah, I don't know, man. Lowered the frequency of enemy attacks on players' camp. This I actually like. Basically, as it currently stands, and will continue to be, your camp only gets attacked when either you or another player are present at that camp. That's the only circumstances it can trigger under. It won't happen when nobody's home. The polite thing to do, obviously, if you're at somebody else's camp and it gets attacked when you're there, especially if they are not, is to do the neighbourly thing and defend their camp, but that doesn't always happen. So fewer attacks mean less chance of coming back to find stuff that's been destroyed. It also means just slightly less inconvenient attacks to deal with when you're at home anyway. With the exception of the occasional big Scorch Beast attack, generally speaking, attacks on your camp are not particularly big deal. They're a minor inconvenience, and that's about it. And they often pull you out of a crafting menu or something when you try and do something else. So less of them is probably not a bad thing, and it doesn't have a massive game-changing impact, but in the moment probably makes life a little bit smoother and less aggravating. So yeah, I kind of like that. Adjusted the Gung Fu perk effect and text description. I'm not sure what the detail with that is. I haven't looked at the perk, and also it's a VAT-based one, so I don't use it. So other than the fact that it's getting a slight rebalance, I guess. Not too sure about what the details there are. This is kind of interesting and also mildly amusing. Bugs have been exterminated and a mysterious construction has begun at Gilman Lumber Mill. So that's the lumber mill that is just south of Vault 76. It is straight down the hill. I've been there twice on the PTS now, at least, and I can tell you that I didn't see any new construction. I wasn't looking for any, but I didn't see any. I did notice the bugs weren't there, but I didn't see the new construction. So conceivably, I am blind as a bat. So the other side of that is, why? The usual reason for building something new like this is because they're going to put a story element there. So hopefully, this is our first hint of story-based update in the upcoming update at the end of August, other than just this stack of gameplay and mechanics changes. So moving on from that, they've renamed over 600 camp items. Now, personally, I tend to go by looking at the actual item itself, the picture, rather than actually reading the name of the thing when I'm wading through the menu. I'm hoping this implies a bigger change to the camp menu, because it really needs an overhaul at this point, particularly for long-term players who have a lot of stuff in there. It's kind of a mess. So I'm hoping this is a precursor to that, but also hopefully it will clarify things. Obviously, in the short term for longer-term players that actually rely on the name of things anyway, if that happens to be you, it's probably going to take a little bit of adjusting to, but I'm hoping it implies something more interesting on down the line. But still, that's a thing. They've removed the Hunter Hunted radio station and event. So for those who don't know, this is a PvP event that does not pop up very often, which is probably why it's being removed. I know there are people out there who claim to absolutely love PvP in 76. They are a tiny fraction of the population, though. It has always been that way. The majority of people don't want anything to do with it and never have, and that isn't going to change. It's got to be months and months and months at least since I last saw this pop up, if not a year or more. It just doesn't happen anymore. Nobody does it. So, yeah, I guess that's why they're yanking it. Don't know what additional benefit there is to it. Save some confusion, maybe. There is a whole load of extra stuff in the radio other than just radio that has been added in recent updates, so that's maybe not such a bad thing for clarity there. So, good with salt description, accurately states effects of modification. That's not a bad thing. Bit of clarity. Refrigerated mod doesn't stack with the perk. Don't know if it ever did. Certainly wouldn't expect it to anyway, because most of these matching effects, a lot of them don't stack anyway. Grenadier perk now applies to Gauss weapons, so basically that expands the range of your explosions. So Gauss weapons, they're all explosive. So Grenadier will directly apply to those. Given that Gauss weapons tend to be expensive, increasing the damage radius on them is not such a bad thing. I definitely think that's probably a good change. Players will no longer receive legendary power armor pieces as rewards from events and quests until level 20. So if you're jumping out the vault at level 20, you wouldn't notice a change there. But if you're coming out at level 1, then you won't get legendary power armor pieces. I'm guessing that's because you can't use them. I think the minimum level is 20, so yeah. That prevents you getting something that is unusable and you having to either lug it around or get rid of it because it's useless. So it also means you're more likely to get something you potentially can use. So good change on the whole, I think. So this is really interesting, and I don't know what I think about it. And that is that legendary creatures will no longer mutate at 50% health to have health regen, but instead have 60% increased health. So as it stands, you attack a legendary creature, its health bar goes down and it gets to 50%, then it regenerates up to 100, and then you can take the whole health bar off after that. That regeneration happens over time though, so effectively their defenses go up quite considerably while that's going on, and then you basically have to take it from the top again, which kind of interrupts combat. It's not the most fun thing, it's mildly annoying to be honest, for me at least. So I think switching it to 60% increased health, which is I think slightly more health than it would otherwise have had, is probably a good thing. I'm not sure if that's going to make it feel more bullet spongy. It depends how much that extra health, how long the time to kill feels compared to having the health regen, because the health regen does significantly up the time to kill, and if you're applying damage, it's still trying to counteract that damage at the same time and try and push it back to maximum. It doesn't always achieve that, but I think ultimately it's going to make legendary creatures a bit easier to kill. Not necessarily a good change in that it's making them easier, but it will slightly decrease the bullet sponge effect on them, I think, which is a good thing. Definitely needs to happen, although making things easier to kill is, especially given that legendary creatures are, as the clue implies in the name, supposed to be particularly tough. Making them easier to kill is counterintuitive, shall we say, if we're being generous. So, various changes to health, resistances, and weapon damage for the following creatures. So we've got super mutants, protectrons, mole rats, Mr. Handies, Mr. Gutsies, feral ghouls, scorched, glowing ones, saltrons, so that's all the robots in there, Milo kings, crabs, and jumping to the end, hunters as well, so everything apart from the queens, cave crickets, rad scorpions, anglers, and all floaters, mutant hounds, and liberators. So that doesn't include sentry bots, but it's most of the robots, or it's 60% of the robots, and a lot of the enemies in there. So there's a couple of possibilities to how this can go. If they've increased health and resistances, I mean, weapon damage is kind of neither here nor there. It makes them either more or less threatening to you. But if they've increased health and resistances, then the bullet sponginess goes up. That is often Bethesda's approach to making something more difficult, and it's bad. Like, if they've increased it, then yeah, these creatures are tougher and they have more time to hurt you, which makes them more dangerous. So that, in a sense, is a good thing, but they've gone the wrong way about doing it, because it makes them really bullet spongy, which is not a fun way to make something more difficult. If they've gone the other way and lowered health and resistances, irrespective of what they've done with weapon damage, then they've made them easier to kill, in which case the game is getting easier, which it needs to be not doing. It needs to be getting harder, not easier, because it's already far too easy. So that's two scenarios wherein this is a bad change. There's a third scenario that doesn't seem to be the case that would make this a good change, and that is where players' health and resistances move either with it or perhaps even further, so that they can kill you more quickly too. Thus, keeping the goalpost either roughly similar or making the threat higher. That would be a good change. It'll upset a few people, but so what? But this doesn't seem to be what they're doing. So whatever they are doing looks like it either makes the enemies easier to kill or more bullet spongy, and neither of those things is a good thing. So I'm deeply concerned that this is actually going to be making combat less fun. So I'm worried about that. This is the change that has me most alarmed in this whole darn thing. There's a few things here that I don't think are good changes. This, I fear, will be a particularly bad one. And we'll see. Again, I do want to test this when I can bring my character over, but yeah, this has me worried. So they've reduced the amount of pop-up information on exiting Vault. That kind of links back to what we were talking about earlier. There is quite a lot that comes up when you head out of the Vault. There's still too many quests, even if you're at level 20. There's a couple that come out level 20 because that's when they start. The Brotherhood quest line, the Wastelanders quest line, that sort of thing. Throwing that stuff at you as soon as you come out of the Vault, especially if it's a new player, because the current pop-up does encourage new players to go to level 20, which is not a good call either. So throwing that stuff at you, I think it needs pushing a bit further down the line at the start of those quests, because overloading information on players is not really the best thing. Or at least making it clear that you might want to save this till later is probably a good plan. But it doesn't do that, so not great at the moment as it stands with coming out the Vault, but reducing the amount of pop-up information overall is a good thing, especially given that there are a couple of new pop-ups been added anyway when you're choosing your level and your loadout. So yeah, it's a good change, one that doesn't seem to go far enough yet, I think, with that one. So they've increased the aid items in low-level quest rewards, so more stimpaks for low-level players. Kills off any challenge for low-level players, which is really the only part of the game that has much challenge, so yep, bad change. Don't like that. Daily Ops rewards prioritise giving unlearned recipes to players. Once all recipes are learned, players will start getting repeats. Okay, so this is mostly a good thing for players. Not entirely so good for Bethesda, but good for players. In that it means you shouldn't get duplicates until you have everything you can get from Daily Ops. So that's great, because there's quite a long reward list in there. So that's cool. And then you'll get duplicates once you've got everything, which starts to show that you've already got everything, so it's informative there. It's going to mean players will stop playing them so much and are more likely to re-roll Daily Ops challenges once they've got everything, and therefore won't engage with this content so much. So that's not necessarily a great thing. The other thing is, in order to keep it interesting and to keep players engaging with it, Bethesda are going to have to start putting out more rewards more quickly and updating the rewards for Daily Ops. And we've already got, well, apparently Meat Week will be getting updated rewards in August, so that's cool. End of August, start September. But other events alongside Daily Ops already don't get enough updates to their reward pools, particularly ones like, say, Mothman Equinox, Invaders from Beyond, which is running at the moment, and the Seasonal Scorch stuff. Because a lot of people clean these events of their rewards out on the first showing, and we've had nothing new since. So that is an ongoing issue. That's also going to become more of an issue with Daily Ops if they're giving out all of the rewards faster, which will be the result of this change. So it basically makes it harder for Bethesda to keep up with that. Given that they're already struggling with it, that's not too easy. It's an understandable problem for them to have, but they are making life harder for themselves, I feel, with this. But on a sort of ground level thing for players, definitely a good change. So, other players can no longer steal your camp's bone chimes. There's a fun one. Okay, nice. So we've got some bug fixes and improvements that I'm going to blast through quite quickly because this is going on quite long now. Adjusted the train around the Moonshine Jamboree event and fixed an issue that could cause the event to fail when depositing Gulp of Venom with a few seconds left on the timer. Great. Fixed various excavator power inconsistencies. That could mean a number of things. It's vague enough that it's hard to comment on exactly what that is, but generally that sounds positive. Red Scorpion omelets now heal Formula P addiction, so that stuff heals addiction anyway. This is an additional one it will heal that it should be healing anyway. The Carnivore mutation now works with the Cannibal perk. That makes sense, and yeah, I think that's a good one. Fix an issue preventing Vax from targeting extra large creatures from a distance, like, say, super mutant behemoths. Yep, that's cool. Or Scorch Beast, I suppose. Fix an issue causing combat groups to persist over long distances, keeping player in combat. Okay, so you should be able to break combat a bit more easily if you want to run away as opposed to getting stuck into it, for whatever reason. Fix melee power attacks, sometimes not registering as power attacks. Okay, so that should make them do more damage more consistently, although it'll also drain your action points more consistently. There are a whole bundle of issues around that, particularly hit reg in melee is still an issue. Not as bad as it used to be fair, but it is still an issue. The imposter sheepsquatch area of attack can no longer damage players who are out of sight of it. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. That's cool. Fix an issue where players could become stuck in the vertibird post-expedition. Yeah, good change. Mutated party packs now grant healing cells when all recipes have been learned. Okay. Neither here nor there really in the grand scheme. That's fine. Salvage Assault on Head now displays charging damage instead of single shot, so you should see the max damage instead of the minimum damage that the Salvage Assault on Head does. Cool. So, new players no longer receive an unnamed radio station with information on Nuke World on tour upon leaving the vault. So, not sure if that means it is named or if it just doesn't pop up. There's no on-screen pop-up, but it might be on the list. Or it might just not appear until you get closer. Could be any of those, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head. But at least when you do get to see it, it'll be clearer, so that's a good thing. I assume it has been named is the implication there. Players can no longer attack with auto melee weapons and sprint at the same time in third person, so presumably bringing that into line with first person, I would think. A good balance and bug fix. And nuke effects no longer appear indoors. Oh, there's a big one. Basically, if somebody's firing off massive, well, particularly a fat man, inside, you shouldn't see the explosion anymore. The damage will still happen, but you shouldn't see the explosion. That's cool. I like that. If they can make it apply to things like the nuclear launcher, which might be included, I don't know, that would be good, and the automatic grenade launchers generally, that sort of thing, I'd be down for that being a good thing. I would also like it to just not appear for any other player generally. Maybe have a sound effect, but not the visual. That would be... This is definitely a step in the right direction. I think they could take it a bit further, but I approve of that. That's good. And there we go. So, yeah, interesting set of stuff on here. Slight hint, maybe possibly, that there is story-based stuff that has yet to be revealed, given the mention around Gilman Lumbermill. We'll have to have a look at that in time. However, this is a mixed bag otherwise. There's some nice little changes that make UIs more useful and helpful and clearer and that sort of thing. But yeah, a lot of these combat changes, combat-related changes, seem to me like they're making stuff redundant, or they are making enemies more bullet spongy or less threatening. And none of these things are good. They are sizable strides in the wrong direction, which it's not the first time they've done this. It's happened a couple of times in the past, actually, and I've said similar things back then, but yeah, I don't get it, man. But yeah, they seem to be desperate to make the game so easy as to have no challenge at all, with the occasional minor exception, and that does not feel to me like a good change on any level whatsoever. So I have some serious concerns regarding this. There are things in here that I'm very much happy about, I'm very much looking forward to, and that are good changes, but there are things in here that I think are not good at all. So yeah, I'm not happy about this at all. I think there's a lot of bad calls in there. Anyway, I'm starting to go around and repeat myself, so I hope you folks found this useful and informative. If you did, please do drop subs and likes for me. I very much appreciate. Hopefully we'll be back to talking about positive changes before long, because there have been a good few of them recently. Just room for some other big ones as well, I think. But if you did like the video, say like, subs, social media links, merch store, and channel memberships all down below the video as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel that way, massively, massively helps out, and I really, really appreciate the support there. Join us for live streams as well if you get a chance. We are, of course, playing Fallout 76, enjoying the new content. And yeah, going to be continuing to head on through that as we go forward, as well as playing a little Metro Exodus at the moment. And of course, we've got Starfield just less than 2 months away, so cannot wait to get to grips with that. Definitely looking forward to playing that. So, if you're interested in all that stuff, you know where the buttons are. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.